Hello, hello, and welcome to the Hiram Connection with your host, Unique, and my special co-host,
Brandon. Tonight we'll be talking about being a student athlete and balancing school, as well as everything else in your life.
First and foremost, let me say that we're glad to be back and are looking forward to bringing you some great conversations over the next few months. I'm excited about tonight because my nephew has joined me for this particular podcast. Since he's gotten involved in athletics, I thought it would be great that we had a conversation about that balancing act that takes place when your child is playing sports, as well as having to complete schoolwork and everything else like household chores and so on and so forth.
So, pretty much the main difficulty that I have with being a student athlete is homework. And it's not that I don't necessarily want to do it. It's the fact that I just came from a long day at school. If it was bad, even if it was good, then I have to go to practice and I get home at like 6 and my bedtime's like at 10 o'clock. Of course, I have 4 hours to do whatever I need to do, but I just want to come home and like lay down, not really have a care in the world. So it just all kind of depends on how I'm actually feeling at that time.
Right.
So homework is just probably like the number one thing that I would say.
That's a challenge for you because, I mean, even at you being at school all day, because that's your job, at being 14. So you go to school, and then you choosing to be an athlete and your mom supporting that, then it's like you go to practice. Then, of course, you have to eat. You have to shower, most definitely. So, yeah, that seems like it can be a serious juggling act. Now, do you have conversations with your other athletic friends that may have the same type of juggling act? Like, do you all talk about some of your challenges?
Kind of all depends on honestly, that's like a conversation for like when we're bored, honestly. Because like with kids, it's not like something that like the first thing that comes to our mind when we think about school or whatever. We're at school, we're there normally just to have fun. We're there to do whatever we need to do. But when we do talk about it, I know from my other football friends, other than homework, they've had maybe a hard time with, because I know some of the games, one of my friends, he has a baby sister. He had to pretty much go to the game instead of babysitting his baby sister like he normally does on Monday. And that throughout like the last couple of weeks pretty much of us actually having football games on Monday, that kind of
threw his schedule off.
Pretty much, yeah, just threw his schedule off a little bit. So you decided to kind of work around that. So
right, so that goes to like those the home responsibilities that you all have. So like with you have cleaning responsibilities and chores and so on and so forth. So that could be a serious juggling act. Now I will say when I played sports in school, and I actually played softball in school, so going to those practices and having to run all these run around the football field because our coach, she was something else. So having to go to school, having to do all that and go to games and stuff. So you do deal with that fatigue, and then you have to get your homework done. You have to make sure, whatever schoolwork you may have missed or what have you, you have to make that up. So that is definitely, a challenge in itself. So Brandon, outside of having the challenges with getting your homework completed, what are some other challenges that you personally find yourself facing as a student athlete?
Sometimes it is kind of hard for me to stay more motivated than certain people because it's just like school isn't necessarily challenging to me all the time, so it does get boring like when I'm in certain classes. And you can kind of see that throughout my grades because I do have A's and B's and I have like one C. And the C that I have a class in is like my favorite class, but it's just not a very challenging class. So I have more missing work in that class than I do in others. And
Right.
I need to kind of change that, but it's kind of hard for me to. And then when I get to sports or like when I get to football, it's like, okay, that I can actually work harder to hit people. You know what I'm saying? Not necessarily that's not necessarily a good thing, but like when my coach teaches me, I don't know what he.
For the record, he plays the cornerback position, so let's make that clear. Go ahead.
I was just saying, this is kind of easier to find a challenge in something because I like being active and I like running and I like sprinting and
Right.
the like one other than like wide receiver I can't catch and like the running back position that's too many plays. There's the corner position where I can actually run out and I can do certain things that other things.
Right. So you're learning and it's exciting and it's challenging, whereas sometimes certain classes can be the opposite of that. So that causes that conflicting, motivating factor that you were that you basically were talking about.
Yes, ma'am.
Speaking of motivation, Brandon, we're going to switch gears for just a little bit before we go to break. You know your auntie loves quotes. I'm going to read 2 separate quotes for you. So we're going to go one at a time, but I want you to think about them before you respond. And I want, from your perspective, I want you to tell me what they mean to you from the student, since we're talking about being a student athlete, and both of these gentlemen are athletes and have played pro ball. But I want you to apply what the quotes that I'm going to read to you. I want you to apply that to being a student athlete and just kind of process and just share with us what they both mean to you. The first quote is by Russell Wilson, and he's a quarterback in the NFL for the Seattle Seahawks. And the quote says, "Always persevere, always have a great perspective, and always have great purpose in your life."
So for me, the part that stands out the most is the part where it says, "and always have great purpose in your life." That pretty much means, I would say, strive for the best in your life. Like, set a goal for yourself. Don't just stop at that goal. Move past it. Beat it. Keep making those goals multiple different times, whether it is homework, whether it is you having a future career in your life, future job. Just always strive for the best of your ability. When it says always persevere, always have great perspective, that I can take to, I would say, more of the football standpoint, where it says always persevere, like no matter what, can also be in your life as well, but always persevere. Just anything bad that might happen, whether it be your opponent is bigger than what you thought they were, or faster than what they thought you were,
right,
or just whatever. Just always try to find a way to get around that. Always find a way. Don't let it stop you right there in your path.
Right. So don't let it basically be that you see this mountain in front of you, but that doesn't mean that you can't get over or around that mountain just because it's there. Okay, that's good. So the second quote is from Steve Young, another NFL quarterback. He had played 15 seasons, and 13 of those were with the San Francisco 49ers. And the quote that I want you to think about and share your thoughts on is this: "The principle is competing against yourself. It's about self-improvement, about being better than you were the day before."
This actually reminds me kind of me in a way, because like I haven't necessarily been a part of a lot of group sports in my life, and the only one that I've actually been a part of was either football, maybe basketball at one point, but I'm not really good at that. So track was kind of the thing that I do. I run fast, that's what I do.
Right.
Other than handing off the baton to somebody else, within those maybe couple of seconds that I have to run, it's mainly about me catching up or beating or keeping the lead from somebody else, taking it from somebody else. So that's just a me thing. I can focus more on me. So when it says pretty much principle is competing is to always compete against yourself, I find that very inspirational for me because that's also something that I had a really hard time with doing in track season because I could never actually push myself past, I wouldn't say my breaking point, quote unquote, but pretty much I could never actually push myself past 100%. I always ran fast, but I didn't run the fastest that I could. The very last league meet, I still didn't run as fast as I could, and I know I didn't. And I just need to learn how to push myself a little bit better. Pretty much all about self-improvement. I try to improve myself every day, but be better than the day before. And that's what our coach always told us to do for football as well. But that was mainly as a whole. So group sports, that would probably mainly go over there. But just me being by myself, I find this quote pretty much great, I guess.
Right. And so you apply that to sports. So how would you apply that to school?
Apply that to school. So, so it says, principle, competing against yourself. So again, with pretty much meeting deadlines, set a goal for yourself, beat it every single time. At least you can't, try to get as close to it as possible. Pretty much self-improvement would pretty much be learning as much as you can while you're in school.
So just challenging yourself to just improve upon, just not necessarily staying in that comfort zone that we sometimes put ourselves in. And I've been guilty of that, even as an adult, I've been guilty of that. But just pushing yourself beyond that comfort level and knowing that you can do greater than what you think you can. So getting out of your own way mentally.
It's true.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you sharing your thoughts on both of those quotes. So ladies and gents, we're going to take a brief break and we'll be back shortly with the second half of the Hiram Connection. Hello, and welcome back to the second half of the Hiram Connection with your host, Unique, and my special co-host,
Brandon. We'll be talking about being a student, athlete, and balancing school, as well as everything else in your life.
So, Brandon, we've had a great conversation during the first half of the podcast, and what I'd like to ask for you to do right now is to give at least 2 or 3 nuggets, is what I call them, or pieces of advice to other student athletes about what are some great ways to try to balance or create that balance of being a student athlete and everything else that comes along with it.
So my first piece of advice would probably be finding time for yourself, because it might be, with everything all wrapped up into one, it can be kind of overwhelming sometimes. So you always want to find time for yourself. I would say number 2, but like the main thing I would probably say, which is piece of advice number 2, is finding time for you to do your work and then for yourself. Because if you can't get your work done, that kind of defeats the purpose of you being in school, getting good grades,
right?
Doing what you need to do to kind of succeed if you want to go into college or whatever you want to do when you grow up.
Those are 2 great nuggets. What do you think is the best method that you could utilize in finding that time? Like, for example, do you create schedules for yourself that you can actually physically see? Do you, how do you go about doing that?
Well, for me, I don't necessarily create a schedule like directly in front of me, but I do create a schedule inside of my head of what time I need to do what period of class. Like one day I might focus on math, one day I might focus on science, one day I might focus on social studies. Just pretty much, I just try to make that mental note inside of my head since we're in block scheduling. So I just can focus on a specific class during one day and then vice versa, change it the next. So that's just kind of easy for me. But then also pretty much not procrastinating is kind of like where I struggle the most.
Right.
That's what I need to kind of get done. So I still got to get some of my stuff kind of turned in because of that.
So just basically keeping that momentum or that motivation up, just like kind of touched on earlier and stuff, where even though some classes may not be as challenging as others, but still trying to find that balance and keeping that motivation to carve out that time to stay focused on whatever your tasks are.
Pretty much. That's right.
That's some great advice. Great advice. How about we stay off that telephone?
That's number 3.
We're being so serious. So it looks like we have a third piece of advice. I know that's right. I'm here right now walking on this podcast, and I'm coming from a mom standpoint. Now, the normal co-host, myself and my sister. Yes. I'm the one with the 14-year-old, and I'm thinking that she might have to get some of the tasking since she has a year-old, so we're not going to tell her age. But when it comes down to it, one of the biggest things that I talked to Brandon about is what?
You talked to me about a lot of things, so yeah.
Yeah, we got that, sir. We're kind of an open book. But when it comes down to that balance of being a student athlete, I think the biggest thing for most kids, or young adults rather, is that time management piece, because it's a different ballpark. Y'all dealing with so many different things, and the combination of it's just getting you prepared for, I would say, what the real world looks like. Getting on some type of routine, putting a lot in a little bit of time. Everybody has the same 24 hours in the day, right? So I think one of the biggest things that you got to focus in on, and all student athletes need to focus in on, is that time management. Because think about it. You're up at what time in the morning?
Like pretty much 6:30.
6:30. And then it's a matter of breakfast and getting your clothes on, whether or not it's JRTC or whatever, specifically to you. Mm-hmm. And then breakfast. And then catching the bus. And then going to school for 7 to 8 hours in the day. Mm-hmm. And then as soon as you get off of sitting down all day, because recess is cut out, right? And everything else of that nature, unless you got PE or weightlifting in your case to kind of burn off all that excess energy. What do we got going on? You're going straight to practice, whether or not it's band, whether or not it's chess, whether or not it's after school programs, in your case, football, track, baseball, whatever it might be. And then you're there for how long? When school gets out at 3:30, you have 4, 5, 6, 3 hours of practice. And then when you have 3 hours of practice after being, where you're at school, at your job for 8 hours, that's 11 hours right there. That's almost half of your day. Then there's travel time back home, eating, taking a shower, decompressing, because as we all know, as adults, we need to decompress. But who needs to decompress as well?
Us
young adults. You need to decompress as well. So with that happening, we're already at 14, 15 hours, right? And then you have to turn around. You got to make sure that you get enough rest. But where in that time frame are you studying for tests? Are you getting your socialization with your friends? Which is why I throw the get off the phone method out, because of the fact that sometimes, what do I catch you doing?
Talking on the phone.
All day, every day. You just spending 8 hours all day with your friends, in passing, at lunch, in school, in the classroom, on the bus, on the field. So what more do y'all have left to talk about? Besides everything that happened during the day. So that's that time, the additional 2 to 3 hours prior to bed, that you could be using to do what? Doing your work. Oh, you about to say sleep. No, sleep, do your work. So that's why I said time management. That's what she was about to say. You said, yes, no. That's your time management piece to go ahead and get your work done. So I think that's something that they need to teach
And every young person that's about to be a young adult, you need to learn about time management. Besides money, besides the economics of it all, besides the reading, writing, arithmetic, history, all those things, you have to learn time management. Because without it, you're going to end up failing.
Yeah, and I think when you learn that at a young age, then it puts into practice and perspective when you get older, to actually shape and mold that whole entire time management skill set. So, because I will say as an adult, I struggle with that a little bit and stuff. But once you get in a routine, I think it's very it helps things to run more effectively and efficiently. As I always say, my two favorite words.
Yeah. All right, I'm done. That's all I had to say because I just walked in on a conversation. I'm like, hold on, wait a minute.
She bootlegging my time.
So, ladies and gents, as you heard, that was the other co-host.
Hello.
Connection. So, but no, we're glad that she slid on in the conversation because I think it's important to have that perspective also from a parent's point of view, as well. So
you're my parent.
I told you in the beginning, her baby is old, so she doesn't understand anymore. He's close to years old and you're 14. So it's a difference. It's a different day and age from when her baby was he's still in existence, but he was your age.
So just so we're clear, my son is 28, so my nephew is 14, so you guys do the math. But nonetheless, it was a great conversation to have, and I am glad that Janice was able to jump in and actually join in on the conversation for the second half of this podcast. So, Brandon, did you have anything else that you wanted to say or add to the conversation about being a student athlete? Or
do your work, don't procrastinate, don't do drugs, stay healthy. Be a kid, have fun, still get your work done. That's all I gotta say. I'm out. Peace.
Those are great nuggets. So now I truly appreciate you hanging out with your auntie. Could have been doing something else, but I appreciate you doing this podcast because I think it's an important conversation to have and subject to talk about. And since you are actually living it and breathing it, I thought it would, be a great thing to have you here on this podcast with me. Ladies and gents, we've reached the end of our show tonight. We'd like to thank you for tuning in as well as your continued support of this podcast. We appreciate each and every one of you. We really, really do. Before we sign off, I wanted to put a plug in for our new ebook entitled How to Launch Your Podcast with a Small Budget. We did it, Janice and I, and wanted to share this information with those that may be interested in starting their own podcast as well. You can purchase a copy from our website, and that website address is www.thehiramgroupllc.com. Again, that's www.thehiramgroupllc.com, and it is only $2.99, and it gives you a great foundation and blueprint on how you can go ahead and get your podcast started. A lot of people think you have to have this huge amount of money, and granted, as you grow, there's advertising and all of that, but when you're just starting out and you have a really small budget, you can actually get it launched and just watch it grow and, actually take that leap. So we wanted to share the information that we had with you all. So if you're interested in purchasing that ebook, just head over to our website. And thanks in advance for your purchase as well as your continued support. And be sure to tune in next time because we have another great topic coming your way.
And that's my mom. My aunt always say,
real sisters,
real talk.
Bye.
Peace.
The Hiram Connection is all over social media. We are currently on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. We would like to thank those who are already following us and encourage those who are getting to know us through this podcast to connect with us because we are very interactive on social media.